to recreate the 60s and feel like you want to sit on the floor, you're welcome to do that. You know, 2 weeks ago, we witnessed the deadliest shooting in United States history. And every time in Congress, after a mass shooting, we hold a moment of silence. And by the way, it's not even a minute, it's a moment. It's a moment of silence. But once again, it looked like Congress was going to do nothing to address the gun violence in this country. And then last Wednesday, was it Wednesday? I thought it was Wednesday. Okay, my notes say Thursday, but I think it was Wednesday. After 25 hours, you kind of forget what day it is. Last Wednesday, I was sitting in a committee hearing for small business. I sit on the small business committee, and I got a text message that I was needed on the House floor to accompany John Lewis as he was about to speak. So I immediately left my committee hearing, made my way to the House floor, and I want to start this meeting tonight by letting you listen to what John Lewis said, which began our 26-hour sit-in.
Mr. Speaker, I have had what I call an executive session with myself. For months, even for years, through several sessions of Congress, I wondered what would bring this body to take action. What would finally make Congress do what is right, what is just, what the people of this country have been demanding, and what is long overdue. We have lost hundreds and thousands of innocent people to gun violence. Tiny little children, babies, students, and teachers, mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, daughters and sons, friends and neighbors. And what has this body done? Mr. Speaker, nothing. Not one thing. We have turned a deaf ears. We have turned deaf ears to the blood of the innocent and the concern of our nation. We are blind to a crisis. Mr. Speaker, where is the heart of this body? Where is our soul? Where is our moral leadership? Where is our courage? Those who work on bipartisan solutions are pushed aside. Those who pursue common sense improvement are beaten down. Reason is criticized. Structure is praised. Newtown, Aurora, Charleston, Orlando. What is the tipping point? Are we blind? Can we see? How many more mothers, how many more fathers need to shed tears of grief before we do something? We were elected to lead, Mr. Speaker. We must be headlights and not taillights. We cannot continue to stick our heads in the sand and ignore the reality of mass gun violence in our nation. Deadly mass shootings are becoming more and more frequent. Mr. Speaker, this is the fight. It is not an opinion. We must remove the blinders. The time for silence and patience is long gone. We are calling on the leadership of the House to bring common sense gun control legislation to the House floor. Give us a vote. Let us vote. We came here to do our job. We came here to work. The American people demanding action. Do we have the courage? Do we have raw courage to make at least a down payment on ending gun violence in America? We can no longer wait. We can no longer be patient. So today we come to the well of the House to dramatize the need for action. Not next month, not next year, but now, today. Sometimes you have to do something out of the ordinary. Sometimes you have to make a way out of no way. We have been too quiet for too long. There comes a time when you have to say something, when you have to make a little noise. When you have to move your feet. This is the time. Now is the time to get in the way. The time to act is not. We will be silent. No more. The time for silence is over. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So that was the beginning. And of course, John Lewis, the great civil rights icon, who wrote the book on nonviolent civil disobedience, was our leader. I had no idea what we were getting into. Unfortunately, I wore a dress that day, so I was unprepared to sit on the House floor. Nevertheless, you can see the pictures of me sitting on the House floor, but I knew that I agreed with him. The time for holding a moment of silence every time people were killed in this country was over, and we needed to do something. And just to let you know, there was just two bills that we are asking to take a vote on. And by the way, this kind of keeps going on and on. They're Republican bills. One is, if you've been deemed too dangerous to fly on our planes, the bill says, then you're too dangerous to buy a gun. So if you're on the no-fly list, you shouldn't be allowed to buy a gun. It seems common sense. And the second one is that we implement universal background checks and close the gun show loophole. Those are the only two bills we're asking. Just a few minutes after John Lewis spoke, the House administration turned off the mics. They turned off the cameras that C-SPAN broadcast, gavel to gavel of our goings-on back in Congress. Luckily, and I learned a lot about social media that day. Luckily, those millennials, they know what they're doing, and they started streaming live video from their phones on Facebook and Periscope. And C-SPAN was able to pick up the live feed for the next 25 hours. Reason people knew what we were doing. And sure enough, by the time we had ended, a huge crowd had come outside our nation's capital, hundreds of people, to cheer us on, to support us. We had people texting us from all over the world as a result of that live feed, agreeing with us, standing with us in solidarity and say, you are right, it's time to do something about gun violence. When I got up to speak, I spoke of 1-year-old Autumn Johnson from Compton, who was killed in her crib. She was asleep in her crib earlier this year in Compton, and it was one of the most heartbreaking funerals I've ever gone to see little Autumn in her little lavender coffin. knowing that her life was over because of gun violence. You know, Speaker Ryan forced an end to our protest, and because they put Congress into recess early. They broke for the July 4th recess early because they wanted to shut us down. But I think why we're having this tonight is because I know I'm not going to be shut down on this issue. They can turn off the cameras, they can recess Congress early. By the way, they recessed in the middle of the night while America slept. They snuck off for their July 4th break. But I'm not going to be shut down. And the reason I brought this here to you tonight, because I know for many of you, this issue is very personal. And we have seen too much bloodshed, you and me. And in 2014, 2,942 people were shot and killed in California. In the last 12 months, 475 people have been shot and killed in Los Angeles County, 84 just in my congressional district. So here's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to have a few speakers that hopefully will limit their speeches to about 2 minutes with some personal experiences and what they want us to hear about gun violence. And then the most important part of tonight is that those of you who would like to share your stories about how gun violence has impacted your life, please, we want you to come to the podium and we want you to take 3 minutes. We've got a little timer because we think there's going to be a lot of people that want to share their stories. Because I'm going to take your stories back next week after July 4th. I'm going to take your stories back and give them to Speaker Paul Ryan. And I'm going to, once again, ask, demand, beg for him to allow Congress to vote on these two common sense solutions to gun violence. And I think together, we're going to send a powerful message to Speaker Ryan. And all we're asking is that we get a vote. All we're asking, which was amazing. You can imagine the symbolism. There was John Lewis, and you remember 50 years ago when he walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge and went from Selma to Montgomery. It was just to ask for the right to vote. That's what he got beat up for. That's what hundreds of peaceful demonstrators did 50 years ago, just to say, we demand the right to vote. So here we are in 2016, and that's all we're asking. Just let us vote on these two bills. I think you deserve that. I think the people in this country deserve that. And I think you're not going to take inaction very much longer. So I hope you'll join tonight if you can. And we're handing out, we have handouts that we're giving out that have a phone number for Speaker Ryan. And we hope you'll call him after this event and tell him that you support common sense reform. And then on the lower half of that piece of paper, there's a space to fill out a direct message to the Speaker. And I will take those back with me on the plane and hand them over to him personally. So, first speaker we have is Sarah Wirtz. Sarah, I know she has just a short time here because she has kids that she was getting a babysitter for, but she needs to get back there. Sarah is a local resident of San Pedro and lost her niece in the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary.
Good evening. Thank you everyone for being here. So I'm a local mom in San Pedro, born and raised. And I met my husband at Dana Junior High School, which some of you might have attended, and he had an older sister. And she ultimately went to school back east and then settled in this adorable little community, Sandy Hook. In December 2012, she took her kindergartner and her first grader to school, and that's the last time she ever saw her first grader alive. So I flew out there right afterwards, and it was like descending into the lower level of hell. choices are being made, like, do you bury the child's favorite stuffed animal with the child, or do you keep the favorite stuffed animal, to remember the child? Backpacks have bullet shards in them. If you stood in her front lawn, you could look up to the left and see another house. The little girl there was friends with my niece. She was killed as well. We had to pull over our funeral procession because there was another funeral procession coming with a hearse with another little tiny coffin in it. So I could go on, and unfortunately I think a lot of you are familiar with this kind of thing, but I wanted to speak today because I want people to understand that while you think this won't happen to you, it can. I live in San Pedro. Nobody thought there was any connection between San Pedro and Sandy Hook, but there is. And a lot of her family lives here, and we think about it all the time. So I just wanted to make sure, the Los Angeles community knew that it affects everybody, and thank you for doing what you're doing.
Bradford, former assembly member for the state of California, is here tonight, and I'd like for him to say a few words.
Good evening. Thank you, Congresswoman Hahn, for putting this event together this evening to stress the importance of where we are as a nation when it comes to gun violence. America represents only 5% of the world's population, but we represent 30% of the mass killings by guns throughout the world. Something's wrong with that number. Something's wrong with that equation. And as Congresswoman Hahn stated, the sit-in last week was allowing folks just to take a vote. And I've been there in the legislature in California when all we said, vote it up or down. But we've always respected our colleagues, and we've given them the right to vote their bill up and down. And that's all Congress was asking for, John Lewis. And when you have a civil rights icon like John Lewis, who showed up when many folks didn't know what was up, who has stood up when many of us were afraid to sit down, and who has spoken up when many of us didn't realize we had a voice, we need to listen to John Lewis. And we need to understand where we are as a nation, because as the last speaker stated, it's coming to a neighborhood near you very soon. I'm tired of hearing people say, oh, I didn't expect this to happen in my neighborhood. Who expects it to happen in their neighborhood? It shouldn't happen in any neighborhood. And I'm glad for the diversity here tonight, because it's going to put a face that many times gun violence is usually seen as a minority issue. As a minority issue, but all the mass shootings are not in minority communities. As we've seen, you're more likely to be killed today in America at school or in your workplace. Something's wrong with that. I worked at Southern California Edison as well as Janice Hahn, and we had the shooting at Rivergrade a number of years ago. It's commonplace, but it's far too common. We need to change it. We need to take a vote, not only in Congress. I was happy to author the bill and legislator 3 years ago to close the loophole on assault weapons. Up until 3 years ago, a corporation could buy an assault weapon and trade it amongst their members of their corporation without having to re-register that gun. You no longer can do that in California. We tried to close the loophole as well on the gun shows, and we had a lot of pushback. And I was talking to the doctor, and he asked me before I sat down, was I a Democrat or Republican? And I joked with him, I said, some days I don't know. Because we need to get past the partisanship, folks, and understand what the issues are at hand. Because at the end of the day, it's not about whether you're a Democrat or Republican. It's about whether you value life. So I respect Janice Hahn, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for your work at the state level, helping to prevent the next violent gun shooting. I now want to invite Dr. Roger Lewis up here to the microphone. He's an ER physician and chair of emergency medicine at Harbor UCLA Medical Center. He treats gunshot victims regularly, and I'm really grateful that he's here to be with us tonight to share his experience.
I'd like to be able to say it's a pleasure to be here. It's actually not a pleasure to be talking about this. So I've been working at one of the local trauma centers for 29 years, and I have seen many, many people shot who had no reason to be shot, or which there was no reason for them to be shot. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we see locally in our community, and then a little story from last night, actually. So our trauma system is here to take care of everybody in Los Angeles County and to give them the best possible care, and it's a system we're very, very proud of. 1 in 16 people that we see in the trauma centers have been shot. So 1 in 16 who need trauma care didn't fall at home, they didn't fall in a bathtub, they weren't on a ladder, they didn't get into a fight, they got shot. In fact, we see as many people shot in the trauma system as we see people who are involved in fights of any sort. Except of the people who are shot, 1 in 14 die. So it's, of course, one of the most lethal things that we take care of. At Harbor UCLA, up the 110, where I've worked for a long, long time, we see almost exactly 1 gunshot wound victim a day. So whereas we've been talking about mass casualty incidents, mass shootings, this is an everyday occurrence in our community. Of those people who survive and get into the hospital, the average length of stay is 9 days. Most of that is spent in intensive care. And we don't keep statistics on the time that's lost away from family, their jobs, everything that makes life worth living. And we don't know, frankly, the fraction of those people that ever get back to their communities and their families and their previous way of life. This is a tremendous burden on our system, our society, and families. And when we look at the statistics of who's getting shot in our community, it's an injury that disproportionately targets, whether it's an intentional targeting or unintentional, people at the prime of life. Last year, 83 of the gunshot victims that we saw were between 10 and 19 years of age. 130 were between 20 and 29 years of age. So let me tell you about last night. So when I was asked to come and talk, I asked the director of our trauma services if he could do it, because he's a good speaker, he's taller than I am. And he was on last night and he couldn't do it, so I asked him, well, what happened last night? Well, last night a 15-year-old young man was walking home at 8 p.m. And you know this time of year, it's light at 8 p.m. And I don't know where he was coming from, although the best guess was he was coming back from playing sports with his friends. And he was shot with a single gunshot wound to the right chest. And everything right was done from that moment on. The paramedics were called quickly. They came quickly. They did everything they're supposed to do quickly. He got to a trauma center quickly. And en route, while being transported, he no longer had a pulse. The paramedics did everything they could. The trauma surgeons did everything they could. Everything that we call heroic measures was done, and he couldn't be revived because the bullet had caused so much damage to his internal organs. It was a non-survivable injury. This is a kid walking home from playing sports. That's last night. So this is an everyday occurrence in our community, and gun violence rips really is some of the most valuable of our society away from us. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is LaWanda Hawkins. Many of you might know her. In 1995, her son was shot and killed just a few short blocks from here when he was just 19 years old. And since then, she's founded Justice for Murdered Children, a San Pedro-based organization that raises awareness and assists victims' families. She always brings this display, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, it is the real shoes of children and others who have been victims of gun violence. It's a very sobering display. LaWanda, we love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Hahn. I truly appreciate you standing up for me. I mean that, not just only for my son, but for the families that I represent on this vest that I'm wearing. We truly appreciate that, because you didn't have to, but you did, and we say thank you so much. Unfortunately, I look in the room and I see a lot of faces of people who've had a loved one murdered that I'm wearing on this shirt, whose children were murdered here in town in San Pedro. And I'm gonna ask these people to stand up who've had a loved one murdered. Basil, Teresa, all of you all that have had a loved one murdered. We say thank you. Yeah, my heart goes out. And we got the Crowder's person who's going to take a stand for us. This is the person who will go back and let them know what's happening in our community is unacceptable. Unacceptable. Gun violence is an epidemic. It affects each and every one of us. Like the young lady just before me spoke regarding the Sandy Hook. She explained that even though it happened in Sandy Hook, it was connected here in San Pedro. And even though it was her niece, at our event every year, we carry those kids' pictures that had killed in Sandy Hook at every event. Because see, their lives affected our lives. We don't know what they were going to contribute. And see, we missed out because they ain't here. And like what happened this weekend here in San Pedro, last weekend on June the 19th, on Western in Harbor City, there was a deadly shooting. 2 people lost their life. One still in the hospital in critical condition. That's our future. So it affects us all, what's happening with this gun violence. And again, I say thank you. What's happening with gun violence in our country today constitutes this country's worst nightmare. This is not a Republican or Democratic issue. It's our issue. Our children are being gunned down on our streets and our schools every day. We hear that the House Speaker wouldn't allow a vote to get on tougher gun laws and no on background checks. How dare him? The question is, how many more children have to be gunned down in our schools, like what happened at Sandy Hook Elementary School? Whose child has to be killed, like the victims in the Orlando bar? Or who parents have to be killed, like the parents who were down here in the Inland Empire, or the parents down in Charlotte? I happened to go down there at that time when that happened at the church in Charleston. And it was just unbelievable to see something like that happen. Just unbelievable, heartbreaking. Every year, hundreds of innocent people become victims of gun violence in our community. They deserve our understanding, compassion, and respect. The more we learn about the impact of gun violence in our community, the greater our responsibility becomes to act. We must respond immediately and take the necessary steps to prevent gun violence from reoccurring. Please join Justice for Murdered Children and these other organizations and our Congresswoman to fight to reduce gun violence in our community by demanding that the House Speaker educate regarding gun violence and demand that the House Speaker take the necessary steps to making our community gun violence free. You see, my only child Reginald and my baby sister Linda, whose faces you see on my earrings, were both victims of gun violence. Do I believe if the perpetrator of both crimes didn't have a gun, both of them would be here today? I would have to say yes. My sister and my baby, my only child, would have been here. To the founders of the victim rights movement, that meant that all victims, regardless of geographic, demographic, or financial status, would have the rights and services that needed, like gun control, to prevent gun violence of any type. Last year, during National Crime Victims' Rights Week, the Department of Justice theme was new challenges faced by victims, talking about gun victims and those who serve them, as well as new solutions and opportunities for response. This recommits, I believe, our nation to realize there has to be some form of gun control and encourages every American to stand behind victims of gun violence and their families throughout the year by demanding that our elected officials make our school and community safe before someone else becomes a murder victim due to a gun violence in our community.
Thank you, Linda. Our last speaker before we open up the public mic is Lori Safian. Lori is the co-chair of the LA-based advocacy group Women Against Gun Violence, which educates the public, lawmakers, and the media about the human, financial, and public health consequences of gun violence. I have known Women Against Violence for as long as I can remember, and when I was on the city council in Los Angeles, they spent a lot of time getting Los Angeles to pass laws and ordinances that would help protect people against gun violence. They're a great advocacy group, and we love it that they're women. So, Lori, come on up.
Survivors, you are my heroes. Really. What you've been through and what you continue to do night and day to make sure others don't endure what you've been through, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And Women Against Gun Violence is so happy to be here with you tonight to recommit ourselves, as we do every single day, to get this done. Congresswoman Hahn, thank you so much for what you're doing on this issue. I don't know if you felt us when you were there, because we felt like we were there with you, sitting there, watching minute by minute, mobilizing our partners like the Brady Campaign and other great organizations to be on the phones, to be emailing, to be tweeting. In this social media world, this is our work, and we can make such a difference. Women Against Gun Violence has been around a long time, more than 20 years, and what the NRA is doing is nothing new. The preying on people's fear and hatred to sell more guns, and then something happens, and then they can sell more guns, and it's just this vicious cycle. And you know who's caught in the middle of it, in the crosshairs of it? Our kids, our communities, and our families. And they've gotten away with it until now. In LA and California, we talked about the work that happened in Sacramento, and you talked about what happened in LA. LA and California, we set the bar for the nation. We have the strongest gun laws in the nation, and now it's time for everyone to pay attention to California and get on board. And that's what's happening. We are thrilled and gratified and hopeful to see this happening at a national level. We hear a lot about the Second Amendment. How about that right to life? How about that right to go to the hair salon or the movie theater or your church or your school or your neighborhood or your shopping mall without fear of being shot and killed? How about that right? So we want you to know we are standing with you, we are sitting with you, and we are beside you in this. We say enough. I just want to give you one thing as you head back to Congress. This copper bracelet bears the name of a young man named Bijan Shushtari. He just made it onto the varsity football team at Hamilton High, and he was shot and killed when he was 18 years old. I know you're going to carry all these stories and all these wonderful people with you. Bijan will be with you too. Thank you for your work.
Reminds me of the sit-in when they Okay, we're going to open up the mic to the audience. You know, and that's a good point that you brought up. Some people even said about the 9 parishioners who were killed on Wednesday night Bible study, prayer meeting, that they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Well, you're never at the wrong place when you're in church. And you're never at the wrong time if that is the appointed time for the faithful to meet together. And I know about Wednesday night prayer meeting because I grew up in church where we went Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night prayer meeting. So you cannot say that they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So at this point, I want to open it up to conversation. I know that many of you are here tonight and you've lost a loved one to gun violence, and I encourage you to share that story and what you think needs to happen to address gun violence epidemic in this country. If you'd like to speak, you're already doing it, form a line. And I was going to, my notes say, let's not have more than 3 people lined up at once, but. And I guess we're going to try to limit you to 3 minutes, just because we know there's so many people here who want to share their stories, and I want to hear the stories. So if you can keep it to 3 minutes, would be great. Obviously, if you're in the middle of a sentence, we're not going to drag you off. But there's the red light, green light, yellow light display. So if you could just look at that, and if you can hand in 3 minutes, we'd appreciate it. And let's all be respectful of those who have the courage to get up in public and share the story. Thank you. And tell us who you are, if you'd like, and we appreciate that.
Can you hear? Sorry. My name's Shannon Ross, and I'm here today to honor my cousin Melody Ann. And my cousin Melody, right here, I'd love for everybody to see her face because I don't want her to be forgotten. She died right here in San Pedro at the tender age of 17. She was a victim of gun violence. And it's hard for me to stand up here today, and I'm not going to lie, I don't know all the stats, but I did know my cousin. And I love her very much. So thank you for holding this. Janice, we appreciate it, and please remember my cousin Melody. We never want her to be forgotten. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, my name is Norabella. I'm an advocate for my family, for my life, for homeless folks, for low-income family members, veterans, for that kind of thing, for kittens also. So I do a lot of everything. I'm up here because recently with the Orlando shooting, I got very scared. My son recently came out of the closet at 16. And my son tells everyone, yeah, I'm openly gay. And I said, you know what, honey, you can't be doing that. And I live in fear that my son isn't going to make it home because there are some crazy people that have no clue what human compassion is about. And I fight that every day with people trying to hurt me in different ways. And I live with that fear for my own son. And I'm scared for my son, Janice, just like I am for my other two, but for my son because he's different. And he's a strong advocate and he's all about his word. So please stop gun violence because I want to see my baby come home. And I can't live with my son being gone. Please. Thank you.
Congresswoman, thank you. I'm Heather Hutt, District Director for Senator Isler Hall. And my children were shot December 2011. Gun violence plagued my home. My youngest son is paralyzed from his knee to his foot on his left side. Fortunately, they're alive with everyone's prayers. But gun violence has to stop. Senator Hall has Bill SB 880 right now that is asking for the discontinuing of selling the bullet button in California to close the loophole. Right. And we support that. We appreciate your support. But even talking about gun violence, how she said Sandy Hook is where her sister was and she never thought it would hurt her family. I never thought my kids would get shot either. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is James LaForge. I'm a district representative for Senator Hall. I am also a constituent, born and raised in Carson. I'm here on behalf of my friend and also my cousin. Armand Jones died March 17th, 2006. He was a very close friend of mine. He was like a brother to me. This kid had a chance to make it, to be somebody. He was an actor that died too soon. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the movie Freedom Riders, but he was one of the actors in Freedom Riders. His name is Armand Jones. He was celebrating the final day of the shoot with a lot of the other castmates. Was on his way to Denny's and was shot and killed over his chain. This was no gangster, this was no thug. This was a high school student who had a chance and was celebrating his hard work, and it was taken away over a chain. So I want you to remember that name, Armand Jones. The next one is my cousin. This kid lived with me. This was my older brother. This was my role model, because I never had one. My mom and dad took my cousin in because he had a rough time because his parents were going through a very rough divorce. So my parents took him in to give him a second chance. So he went from a dropout student in middle school to an honor roll student in high school. star on the football team. On September 29th, he picked up an onside kick to help preserve the game for Carson High School football, and they ended up winning that game because of the onside kick that he picked up. On his way home after the game, he was shot and killed. This was no thug, this was no gangster. He was in the car with his teammates on his way home, shot and killed right around the corner from my house in Carson. Dominic Joseph Batiste, and that was September 30th, 2000. This has to stop. It has to stop. It's been a problem, and it needs to be addressed. And I want to thank you for what you have done and all the work that we will continue to do, and we will fight on, and we will get this bill and be able to get to vote. Thank you.
My name is Chef Bass. All of you know me. I was voted this year the #1 volunteer chef in the world for feeding 109,000 homeless veterans and veterans. My son used to work for that woman right there. And I know my family's going to be upset tonight when I'm getting ready to say, because it's a hidden secret in my family. But a lot of you didn't know, I lost my firstborn December 19, 1992. A lot of y'all didn't know that. I don't think you knew it. Michael never talked about it in the office. I took 2 bullets from the military right here. Lost my arm and got put back in the military. But these kids aren't military out here. They're not military. These type of guns don't deserve here.
That's right.
I remember I got the call from Vicky, 1995 I think it was, when her boy got killed at, I think it's Compton High School. Homecoming game. I remember you lost yours. Where's Teresa? Remember she lost hers. Where's Luana? I'm a grown-ass man, but I cry for my son every day like I cry for all these people. I'm a sniper. I've seen death. But when you see kids die, it makes you different. It does, trust me. When you lose somebody, it's different. Guns do not belong on the street. They belong in the world, in the military. So it saddens me to see as many people on that wall. I'm 63 years old and I still cry every day for my son. Every day. And I will fight for that woman right there. I've known her too. I remember shooting with her family. So I asked Congresswoman for you to go and do what you have to do. We, as you know, blog out to 40 million people a day. And whatever we have to do to help you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a strong black man, but when it comes to my kid, I wobble. You know what I mean? You wobble. So, thank you, and thank all of you for supporting Steve Bradford, all of you. You know, I'm gonna salute all y'all. And I salute the mothers and the fathers that lost their kid too. And I'm gonna fight for you every day. When I'm in the streets feeding the homeless women. You'd be surprised, Congresswoman, how many homeless women I feed that tell me they lost their kid, but they can't do nothing about it. Please send a message to the Speaker of the House. Chef Basil, thank you.
Hello, my name is Jess Gayer. Sorry, I'm emotional. None of the people I'm going to talk about.
Sorry. Go ahead.
None of the people I'm talking about were my relatives. I worked for LAUSD for 35 years, and these were 3 of my students. One of them was just killed just about a month ago in Wilmington, riding his motorcycle. He was 34 years old, but I knew him since he was in 2nd grade. He was my neighbor. He left a 3-year-old son. The other one is Ruben Camacho, who went to 232nd Place Elementary in Carson. He was out with his friends, his brother. They were in a car at the corner of Avalon and Carson Street. September 2nd, 2007. A car pulled up by them. Some kind of words were exchanged. There were shots fired, and he died on his 14th birthday. The last one I want to talk about is a special one. His name is Gabriel Garibay. And talk about gun violence. This happened in 1992 as well. The speaker before me was talking about 1992. I knew Gabriel from the time he was in 2nd grade. I worked with him. He needed a little bit of help. He was the sweetest boy you'd ever want to know. Came from a good family. And unfortunately, I'm actually a substitute, and I came in and he had already, I knew him from 2nd grade to 5th grade, and then he went to Wilmington Middle School. He went to Freeze too. Well, I'm going to make this quick, but anyway, I was substituting for a class, and this little kid said, "Did you hear what happened to Gabriel?" And I said, "No." And they said, "He was shot dead yesterday." Anyway, what happened was he was playing in front of his house near Banning Park in Wilmington. Some gang members came by looking for another gang member. They were shooting for the gang member. The gang member, to me, cowardly, ran into a group of kids. And the gang member shot into the group of kids. And Gabriel was shot in the stomach and died in surgery. Teachers weep for their kids. I still cry over them. Thank you.
My name is Lori Jacobs. My story is a little bit different. Unfortunately, the result's the same. So on February 27th, 1977, my dad had been depressed, extremely depressed, under doctor's care, and he was able to go out and get a gun. On the next day, he shot himself. I'm here to talk about background checks and helping the mentally ill from having access to a weapon. My life was forever changed. My family's life was forever changed. My younger brother stopped talking, and he went into a deep, I don't know what, a spiraling down thing. In 2007, my younger brother took his own life too. And I shouldn't be the survivor of 2 suicides. And I want to fight for the mentally ill to not have access to these things. It's just not right. My heart weeps for all these stories. I just don't understand the people that think that these guns are going to protect them. These guns are not going to protect them. They're going to kill the innocent, and it has to stop. Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you so much for doing this. Thanks for everybody else. The stories are horrendous, and it just goes on, and it has to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to speak at your meeting. My name is Amanda Rodriguez. I'm with the National Organization of Parents of Murdered Children. Unless you've had a murder in your family, you just don't know what it does to you. I do. I walk in those shoes every day of my life. My nephew, Brandon Hansen, was murdered on May 17th, 2010, shot in the back several times. His girlfriend that he was in love with and her other boyfriend were involved in the murder. Brandon was in love with this girl, and it just breaks my heart. She pleaded guilty to accessory to murder and received only 2 years. In the state of California, accessory to murder maximum is only 3 years. He received 81 years to life, and he's in prison meeting a lot of people named Bubba. I know that for a fact because I follow him regularly. I would love to share the story of Brandon, but it's very long. If you want to talk to me after the meeting, I'll be happy to share it with you. His murder is on video, so we had to endure that during the trial. But all this gun violence just needs to stop. And I also want to thank you for putting him on your memorial wall and give my condolences to everyone here that has lost somebody to gun violence. Thank you.
My name's Kathy Familiti, and thank you very much, Congresswoman Hahn. Like Amanda, who is my cousin, I earned my seat in the Parents of Murdered Children's organization 28 years ago when my nephew was murdered because some guy wanted to be part of the Harbor City Crips, and he needed to shoot somebody by Friday night at 8 o'clock to get initiated. And then 6 years ago, when my cousin, which is her nephew, was murdered, we got together and we said we need to help other people because we've now lived it. When we walk in our shoes, we know how we got through it. Although my organization doesn't allow me to support or not support any issues on gun issues, I can speak as for the families that I know, and 50% of our families, if not more, were killed by guns. And 50% of those families in my group are unsolved. And there's no money in the city of LA for overtime for our detectives to work on those cases to get those people off the streets so no more happens. I can say that although it's been 28 years for my family, it doesn't end there. It goes day in and day out. My brother and my sister-in-law still are tortured by it. A couple years ago, we sat in our 4th parole because this guy has rights. And we sat in this parole and we listened to him tell us why he did it and how he did it with no emotion. So bad that the parole board said, I don't want to see you in 3 years, I don't want to see you in 5 years, we'll see you in 10. Because if that's what you do to somebody that was trying to be nice to you and give you a ride, I'm afraid what you would do if you hated him. You know? I'll just close with saying his little brother, my nephew was Anthony Ray Manas. He died on February 21st, 1988. His little brother was 8, and he never went to any of the court hearings because we didn't want him to see this guy's face and have it in his psyche. He wrote a letter. He didn't even want to go to the parole board, and he wrote a letter, and this is the way we feel, and this is the way I'm going to feel until the day I die. And I'm sure my cousin Amanda and Anthony's sister Roseanne, we promised, wheelchair, whatever it takes, I'm going to be there to make sure this guy stays in prison. Anthony wrote a letter, and we closed it with, the day my brother gets out of his box, Jerry can get out of his. Okay? And we need to stop this so nobody else gets in the same box that Anthony's in. If anybody wants to talk to me in my group or a support group, we meet once a month here in San Pedro, just down the street. I have cards. You can see me later.
Congresswoman Hahn, I'd like to thank you for holding this, letting the public speak. I would first like to say that I give you credit for prevention, specifically preventing the Syrian refugees from coming to this country will prevent a mass shooting maybe in 30 years. Just like how the Orlando shooter was raised by a hateful person who was a refugee from Afghanistan. Hopefully, no Syrian refugees will come here and raise hateful children that will do the same. Second, in 2011, you were sworn into Congress. I'm sure you remember that day very well. Took your oath of office. Later, I took an oath of enlistment later that year. They share part of the same words, to support and defend the Constitution. And I am disappointed that you are supporting depriving people of their rights without due process.
Whoa!
There's the Second Amendment.
Whoa! He has the right to speak.
Yeah, he has the right to speak.
I have the right to say what I feel.
He has the right to speak.
As you know, the Second Amendment guarantees the right to keep and bear arms, and that it
As a
shall not be
militia,
infringed.
as a militia, you're not in a militia. You're a
And the
private
5th
citizen now.
and
You don't need
14th
a gun.
Amendment guarantees the right to due process before being deprived of a right, and you putting millions of people on a no-fly list and not letting them exercise their Second Amendment right, I don't understand how you could say that you're supporting and defending the Constitution while depriving people of those rights. Thank you.
Grow brain. I'm in the United States Army. You in the wrong place, brother.
Lucky me, I get to follow that. My name is Doug Eberhardt, and I've been involved. This is hard. I've been involved with neighborhood councils since the beginning, and I've known Janice Hahn even longer. This is the best thing you've ever done. Tonight shows that when these murders occur, it's not across the country, it's not some other group, it's all of us. It touches each of us. A little over 2 years ago, I was at the Olympic Park Neighborhood Council meeting at the West Traffic Bureau Police Station on Venice Boulevard. In the middle of that meeting, a man walked in with a gun and started shooting at the officer at the front desk on the other side of the door from where about 24 of us were. It sounded like World War III. I turned around in time to see a bullet come through the wall. Everybody hit the floor. And I can tell you, lying there with those people, I thought, if that door opens and the shooter walks in, we are all in a hell of a lot of trouble. I hope none of you are ever in that position. The police killed the man, but not before he shot an officer 7 times, who survived. I was there until midnight that night, getting interrogated along with everybody else. What did you hear? What did you see? What went on? And I was angry. I was angry that some man who had a mental problem and a grievance he felt with LAPD walked in and started shooting. I guess we were lucky because he never opened the door to the room we were in, and he left the AK-47 in his car and used a handgun. I'm glad that it worked out at least as well as it did, and that everybody but the shooter survived. Anything that you can do, anything that any of you can do to make it so that the freedom of a mentally ill person to walk around with a loaded firearm, to stop that. Because frankly, I have rights too. Okay? As do we all. And I think the most important right is that we shouldn't have to fear terrorists, but we really shouldn't have to fear our fellow citizens. Because this isn't radical Islam, and it's not some overseas group. This is Americans killing Americans. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Josiah Broderick, and I'm here speaking on behalf of my sister who was murdered just last year in Long Beach by Martin Luther King Street. And one thing about my sister that was really, really special, and I really appreciate, is that she always wanted the community to pull together. And no matter what it was, volunteering anywhere, no matter what it was, she always did it. She always went for it. And then one thing that I could really learn from her is that whenever I had trouble in school or something like that, she always told me, Josiah, don't let that get you down. Just keep on moving. And that's one thing that all of us need to do. Is that even though we have somebody who's gone, even though they're gone physically, they're still with us spiritually.
That's right.
They're always with us. And I want to thank you, Congresswoman, for coming here, because just knowing that our government really cares about us and fights for our rights. And cares about all of us. No matter what religion we are, whether gay, lesbian, no matter what we are, we can all come together in one place like this.
Right.
And these little things like this, there's a reason why, so all of us can pull together and forget about our troubles and try to fix them.
Right.
Because all of these things need to be fixed now. We shouldn't just be bystanders and just let this pass by. All of us together need to try to pull together and stop it. At this moment.
My name's Arthur Schopper. I'm a resident of Torrance, California. I want to just put this out right away. I don't really care for guns. I don't own any. But at the same time, I don't honor these policy attempts to take away people's rights to keep and bear arms. My father was in the military, by the way, and he tried to train me to use a firearm. Wasn't that good at it. Nobody got hurt. But the bottom line is, and to hear the stories of so many people losing loved ones, it's all the more that I'm here today saying that we need to make it easier for law-abiding citizens to have a firearm. We need to make it easier for individuals to be trained to have a firearm. I mean, what happened in Sandy Hook? It had a big target on it. Why? Because it's a gun-free zone. It is legislated that a school. Mr. Bradford mentioned that schools are where a lot of our murders are happening. There's a very simple policy to this. Remove the gun-free zone mandate from these schools. Allow people to have a firearm, to be able to stop an assailant. We had a gentleman in Hawthorne, California who stopped an assailant. He's a concealed carry weapons permit owner, and he stopped that guy from hurting him. We had another gentleman who stopped a thief in Redondo Beach. Torrance has also relaxed their the gun control in their city. They have abided by federal court rulings. We have a lower crime problem in Torrance, and it's going to go lower because there is a supposition that person might have a firearm. I'm going to think twice about committing a crime. I also feel, Congresswoman Hahn, that 25-hour sit-in was a waste of time. When you do a sit-in, you do it to get rights, not take rights away. There are millions of people in this country, because they have a firearm, they're able to protect their families and protect their community. And that's the message we need to start sharing with people. The gun is not the problem, it's the person firing it. You may not like the cliche, but it's the truth. Guns don't kill people, people do. These criminals do, these mentally ill individuals who need to be incarcerated, I agree with that. You want to talk about gun control, I support it for criminals. I support it for mentally ill who are a threat to themselves and to others. You can shout me down, but I'm going to keep speaking. He sat there for my rights too.
Yeah, everybody gets 3 minutes.
Mr. Lewis sat for my rights, did he not?
Yeah.
I have a right to vote.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what color my skin is. I have a right to speak, even if you don't all agree with me.
You do.
Thank you very much.
You let him
And I want to add, Congresswoman Hahn, I do appreciate, and we got to deal with the deeper issues. We need to secure our borders. We have Islamic terrorists who are either coming here or they're being trained to be violent. And we need to stop taking the firearms away from the law-abiding citizens. Thank you. Thank you. That's it now. I appreciate it again. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., if you own a firearm too, thank you very much. The first members of the NRA were African Americans because they wanted to shoot the Ku Klux Klan. I'm not going to take their guns away. They'll do. I'll be right there with you, Cousin Steve, and we'll shoot together. Thank you. So here it is. Okay, I'll wrap this up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And just to remind everyone, and again, everyone has the right to speak. This is a public meeting. Everyone has a right to speak. But just to remind everybody, in no way are the 2 bills that we're asking to have a vote on in any way taking away people's Second Amendment rights. You're deemed too dangerous to fly. We think you're too dangerous to buy a gun. And the other one was, by the way, members of the NRA and And law-abiding gun owners agree on both of these, but particularly on the universal background check. No one who is a law-abiding gun owner disagrees with the fact that when you buy a gun, you should have a background check and a waiting period so we can make sure that guns are not in the hands of those who have mental health challenges or who are terrorists. So, thank you. Okay. Thank you.
My name is Peggy McCrum, and I'd just like to follow what was spoken on. We talk a lot about rights, but what about the right of a child to grow up? What about the right of parents to see their children grow up and enjoy their company for their hopefully long lives? And I have to strongly disagree with the last speaker about the sit-in in Congress. I was crying because it was so important to me to see that our legislators cared enough about the victims of gun violence, and when we talk about rights, we care enough about the victims of and that's what we're all here today, to support you, to give us our rights to a long life, a productive life, which was denied my brother Robert Kelly. He was shot to death walking to his car, and you know, when I hear everybody else speak, it's just time and again, people are walking to their car from the store. Children are walking home from the playground. Children are playing in front of their home, and they get shot dead. So this is the situation we have in the United States right now, and I know we can fix it. And with our legislators working for background checks at all points of sale, I think we can do so much better than where we are right now. Thank you.
Congresswoman Hahn and sit-in members here.
Right.
Congresswoman Hahn, I honor you today. I would also like to point out to this wonderful body of people that the only ones who, from both the central and coastal neighborhood councils who are here today are the progressive ones. All of those people who were against the tiny homes, against the homeless, have stayed home because they're accusing you of politicizing an issue. And I would like all of those progressive candidates who ran and some of whom were elected to stand up and be recognized today by this body. Happy to have followed Mr. Shaver over here. He's a long time, adversary, and I will defend his right to speak. And I print every letter to the editor, but I do respond, and I will respond tonight by saying that in the Constitution there is also the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that right actually precedes the Second Amendment. And if you look at the amendments of the Constitution, they are put in a certain priority level. And religion and free speech are at the top. And gun ownership, as it is debated, is second in the rights. Now, I agree with what you're saying tonight, because when I was back in college, my first job was at a mental institution. And the very first day that I showed up on that job, one of the inmates of that mental institution had gone down to the Union War surplus right here in this town, bought himself a long-range rifle, and blew his brains out in the bathroom. Luckily, I did not have to clean that up. Later, when I first bought my house on near Pacific Avenue, back before you were elected to city council, there was drive-by shootings on a regular and frequent basis. There were trails of blood down the street past the California Hotel, and that did not stop until we started to look at the causes of crime in this city, much of which you addressed up in the central city, along with the gang truces and all of that sort of thing. There are solutions to gang violence.
There are solutions to shootings, and I do not want to see the blood next to the graffiti in my neighborhood again. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rachel Bunke, and I'm a teacher. I'm a high school, very local high school teacher. But I was an elementary school teacher also. My first school that I taught at was Normont Elementary right in Harbor City. And I was about 21, 22 years old, and I'll never forget the day we had a drive-by, and I thought it was firecrackers. I didn't know, and I was up there teaching my second and third grade class, and all the kids who were 7 and 8 years old knew exactly what it was, and they dropped, and they said, Miss Bronke, down. And I thought, these kids live with this all the time. As a high school teacher now, I know that in our curriculum, in history, it's war after violence after violence. My dad, when he was about 70, was held up at gunpoint. He was not shot, but he was held up at gunpoint coming back from the post office or something, and it changed him. It got him angry and internalized and very bitter. And that was something that very much affected him. And I would just like to say that as a mom of a 12-year-old, I've been having to keep my girl from seeing violence and thinking about violence and having violence all around her, all her life. The billboards, the TVs, the movies, the music, everything. We've got to all boycott all forms of violence, because it leads to this. It's like fascism. If you don't stop it right away, it's just going to get to the end. And we have got to be principled about this, and we are non-stop kind of competitive in this country. We don't have a heart. How can we have a heart about not killing people when we don't have a heart about throwing people in the street, or have a heart about not making sure they have medical care? It's a huge package that we need to be very holistic in seeing. And you and I were at an event several years ago, and I would like to reestablish this woman's dream. She was a sculptor from Northern California, and she made peace angels. And yeah, we were at the DoubleTree, and there was a big event at SA Recycling where there was a huge turn-in of guns, and from those melted down guns she made a statue of a peace angel. And at that time she said her vision, her dream, was to have a peace angel the size of the Statue of Liberty as the LA waterfront's entry point. What a beautiful thing. We got to think big about peace in general, and this can be solved. Thank you.
All right, that was not your 3 minutes. Go ahead, Ray.
Thank you. My name is Ray Regalado, and I work for the Los Angeles County Human Relations Commission. One of the specialties, one of the things that I worked on for many years, and Congresswoman Hahn is very well, probably remember this very well, was a shooting that occurred in the Harbor Gateway community. 14-year-old African-American young woman was shot and killed by 2 gang members because they decided it was time to pay back.
Right.
They shot into a crowd, and this young woman died. One of the things that I did with the commission, or continue to do, is kind of look into the victimization of violence in our community, racialized violence, and we're now looking into the racialized gang violence that we seem to be having in our communities. I'm not here as a representative of the commission. I'm here as a person who has to admit that I feel fortunate. I feel fortunate because I have not suffered the agony of losing someone close to me. But as a parent, I fear that my daughter may become a victim, or someone that I love may become victim because of the fact that we have all this weaponry in our neighborhoods. We don't know who's carrying this stuff, and anyone can become a victim. That 14-year-old young woman had no idea that when she went out to talk to and hang out with her friends that she was going to die that night.
I know.
She went out just to have fun. Just like probably every other victim that we see up on that wall. What we see globally, what we see nationally, we will see it here locally. That's one thing that I have seen in my work. Let's prevent it.
Yeah.
Please, let's prevent it. Let's not stop this particular effort, this passion that we are all gathered here today. Let's not stop it at 7:30 or whenever this thing ends today.
Right.
It has to continue. We have to have that spark that's going to continue the argument, because I'm going to tell you, you said something that really hit me a little while ago. I kind of wrote it down. You said, and I'm going to paraphrase it badly, John Lewis fought for the right to vote. And you were asking, by sitting there, as history was being made with this sit-in, you were asking for the vote to occur again. But I'd like to change it a little bit, if I could. I would like that as John Lewis fought for the right to vote, I would like to see that we also fight for the right to live. Thank you.
I just wanted us to give a Harbor area welcome to Kyle Miller from La Habra Heights. He's an elected official there, mayor, vice mayor, mayor of La Habra Heights, came all the way here. So I want you to give him a real warm harbor welcome. And Kyle, if you want us to have a sit-in La Habra Heights, we're coming. Just tell us when it is. But thank you for being here. You're a good friend and you're a good elected official who serves the people. Okay, Bob.
Thank you, Janice. It's a little hard to verbalize what I want to say, so bear with me, but the first thing I have to say is how much I respect the people who've come up and shared your grief, because it really is grief. And so I'm just going to share one little story with you, which is I'm holding a cup of coffee, and back in 1997 I was teaching a class, a college class, and I spilled the cup, I dropped the cup, and there was this pool of coffee on the floor. And I really almost lost it, because I've talked to other survivors, and they understand. Yeah, it reminded me of the pool of blood, the pool that was widening from my friend Lawrence Austin. And he was lucky in a way, because he was shot right through where his right eye had been when I had been talking to him a half an hour earlier, and he was at least lucky enough to be dead from that kind of a wound. And I remember looking over the refreshment counter and staring at him for a long time to make sure that he was really dead, hoping that he was really dead, because who would want to survive that kind of a wound? And you know, it's not the same thing as losing your own kid or your immediate relative. He was a friend, and it was somebody who had introduced an awful lot of the culture of film history of Southern California to me, and I really missed that, and I knew I was going to miss a major cultural institution and a dead friend. And it stays with you. It's now 19 years. The young fellow who shot Lawrence was 19 at the time, and so he now will have spent almost exactly half of his life behind bars for having done this act of stupidity and taking a few bucks for doing a murder. The thing that strikes me about this tonight is, first of all, it would be nice if, for once in your lives, the pro-gun people would admit that bullets do kill people. It's so painfully obvious. Yes, people kill people. They kill people in lots of ways. But it's so much easier with guns. It's 30,000 a year in this country. And I would like to think that the sit-in in the House of Representatives will be the signal that causes all the rest of us to actually demand some action. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Christian Guzman. I'm honored to be around you and to listen to these stories. First off, I wanted to say that the Constitution is a very impressive document, but it wasn't a perfect document. It was a product of compromise, and when it was passed, it had language such as 3/5 of other persons in it. So the Constitution has changed through time. Alcohol used to be, illegal. People weren't for that. So the Constitution can change. But also, growing up, I was lucky to never lose someone to gun violence, but I was often around guns, and they were owned and acquired in not a legal way. So I really think it's too easy to get guns. And when I was growing up, I found bullet casings, in the playground. My brother he actually found a bullet casing last week, just in a park, and it's a little daunting. It's terrifying, and I think it needs to be made more difficult for certain people to get these weapons immediately. So thank you for anything you can do. Let's not only change the laws, but let's change culture, promote peace, and thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Brunke. I'm a proud sister of the gal Rachel who talked about the angel, building an angel out of guns. And anyway, I just wanted to thank you so much for holding this. I caught it on Facebook a couple of days ago, and I thought, oh my God, that's where I'm going to get active. And I speak, and I want to honor everybody that came here and that lost a loved one to gun violence. I speak of coming from a mother that I raised my children overseas, not by choice, but I was living overseas in a European country for 19 years. And coming from America, I remember being afraid of guns, just being fearful of guns. And when I went over there, I remember going to the parks, walking to the parks, being in the parks in the evenings, and never fearing for my life or my children's lives for those 19 years. And it was really bizarre. I remember going, oh my God, I'm not afraid. I'm going to get shot and killed. And I knew at one point I had to come back home to be with my family in California, in the South Bay, and here in San Pedro. I wanted to come home to be near my family, near my aging mother. And it was time to come home, and my children followed me. But my biggest fear was they were going to come back to this very, very violent society. But this is the land of opportunity. This is where you can find work. This is where you can find a life and build a life for yourself. They can't in their home country in Europe. So today I want to just say that I'm so unfortunately excited in a negative way that I'm going to speak up and get proactive with all of you. But I needed something to do after work and get active in this society, in this community. And I'm so excited that I get to be a voice and help all of you people. I'm here, call upon me, thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, brothers and sisters, panelists. My name is Diane Middleton. I'm a retired attorney. I've lived in this community for 40 years. First of all, let me join with so many others in the room in thanking the Congresswoman for calling this meeting, bringing us together, and taking a first step. I wanted to speak last because I wanted to be sure that it was very, very clear that this meeting is about stopping gun violence. And I wanted to be sure that all people who have lost loved ones and had suffered had an opportunity to speak first. But I want to make sure we also understand, at least I want to share with you my vision of why this is the first step. First of all, it is a national disgrace that we have more guns in this country than any other country in the world. It is a national disgrace that we kill people at a higher rate than people in any other country in the world. They don't understand how this can be so. We talk about wars, and many people have died in wars, but more people have died because of gun violence. There shouldn't be any guns in this country. And we can talk about the Second Amendment, and we can talk all these other nonsense things. Look at the people that are killed. Too many people are being killed. We heard the testimony today. It's got to end. Now, I'd like to point out that the people doing the killing are not terrorists. They are not foreigners. The serial killers are mainly white people. So that gets lost. A lot of that gets lost, okay? We have to look at what is it that binds a lot of these killers together. And it's one thing: mental illness. So while you're here, and while I said this is a first step, I want to urge you, Congresswoman, unlike other speakers, I admire the stands you've taken keeping us out of war. I admire the fact that you didn't let us waste more money on a senseless war in Syria. Keep it up. If we had our priorities right, we'd spend more money on our people and their health. What does it say about a society where health care is a privilege, but people want to stand up and argue that gun ownership is a right? I don't think so. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nick, and so I'm a local community activist with Organizing for Action. And so thank you, Congresswoman, for hosting this event tonight. So today I'm just here, just hearing all the stories is just upsetting, and I just can't believe that there is so much gun violence in this country. I have family over in Australia, and I see in Australia where there's hardly no gun violence because of the laws that are in place in Australia. I'm just here tonight just to honor. I came up here for a close friend of mine that 4 of her friends who worked at Disney World were gunned down in Pulse nightclub. And
Take your time. It's all right. Take your time.
just to hear just her crying to me, and then just as a gay man, I just never thought this would happen, because after marriage equality was passed, we knew that this wasn't going to be we knew it was going to be a long road ahead. But it's just looking at these pictures up on the wall, I'm just pissed off. I'm sorry for saying it, but it's just
Okay, be pissed off. I don't want you to be pissed off.
I'm sick and tired of hearing gun violence on the news. I'm sick and tired of just hearing innocent people gunned down. I'm sick and tired of hearing this is Islamic terrorism. This is not Islamic, it's radical terrorism. This was a man that was hateful, full of hate, raised by hate, had a gun, automatic assault weapon.
That's right.
Why does someone need to have an assault rifle? And to hear 49 people gunned down.
I know.
At that time, I just woke up to go to church, and hearing that, I was just afraid to go out. I just like, what would happen to me? What would happen to many the people, my brothers and sisters in the gay community? What would happen to them? And my mom, she doesn't agree with me being gay, but she's afraid for me. She's like, she doesn't want anything to happen to me.
We're with you. We are here for you. We're with you.
For taking a stand to the other side and saying enough is enough, not one more. Disarm hate, because right now not every law will save a life, but if we can, we need to take action. We can't just sit idle by and do nothing. The victims' families, everyone here is demanding action, and thank you so much for taking those steps.
Thank you.
To fixing the culture of this country, and fixing like guns aren't. They aren't the answer. Action is the answer. Change is the answer. We need to change culture. We need to change the guns in America. I'm sick and tired of it. And so, and I'm just thankful for you. Thank you.
Hi, Thank you, Ms. Hahn, and thanks everybody for coming. I wasn't sure if I was going to speak when this started, and I thought, well, I'll listen first, because I figure people are going to bring a lot more to this conversation than I might. But what I think of myself as lucky is that not having been touched directly by gun violence. Excuse me, these things are just, emotionally charged. I am, because I like people, mostly. Sometimes they make it difficult, but if you have to try too hard to imagine how someone else's pain is remote from yours, then there is something wrong with you. And you should be seeking help, not a firearm. You should not be seeking some external way to give yourself a sense of confidence or power in the world. It's not civilized. It's not reasonable. The numbers do not back you up. You're not safer. If you use those same arguments to solve any of the other technical, practical issues in your life, you're going to be in a bad way. People don't affect anything with the kind of broken logic and emotional arguments that are used to somehow suggest that we need to be armed to the teeth at all times to protect us from other people who are armed to the teeth at all times. Other civilized countries, places where any of us would be at least reasonably welcome and comfortable, don't do it this way.
Right.
And the fact that on a governmental level we have such resistance to even discussing the problem is the most basic, should be the most basic source of our shame. We can even talk about the problem.
That's right.
Forget whatever base emotional drives would cause someone to decide that they need to kill someone else over an attitude or whatever. The fact that we call ourselves civilized, we have robots on Mars, but we can't agree that we should just sort of disarm and even talk about why we are in that stance in the first place. And that our government, as much trouble and as much blood has been shed to establish it for us, is handcuffed to the industry that is literally pointing guns at our heads. We need to let events like this be, hopefully for some people the first time, but certainly for no one the last time that they speak up and they let our elected leaders, who should only be, they shouldn't be the first leaders also who inspire us to do something. Ray Regalado and Lori Jacobs, inspired me to get involved.
Me too.
So other people should be similarly inspired, because any little thing is more than nothing, and standing by while this happens makes you complicit. You don't have to pull the trigger to make gun violence worse. You can stand by and let someone else do it. You can make the weak arguments and the comfortable reasoning that says, we can't ever make them go away. We can't. Nothing can be done about it. Everything can be done about it, and it won't prevent these things. But when they do happen, we won't have to say, well, someone should have done something. You can always be that person. So thanks, and please stay involved. Let your leaders know.
Thank you.
It's time for this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you all. This one's and this one. Oh, here we go. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for having the courage to get up at that podium and share your story. It was unbelievable. And I thought, because I've been around for a while, right? And I've been representing this community for 17 years. 2 years on the Charter Reform Commission, where we started neighborhood councils, then 10 years on the city council, now 5 years in Congress. And I was thinking, when so many of you got up to speak, we don't always agree on everything. There's been a lot of issues that we've been on different sides on. But on this one, it really feels amazing that so many of you have come to say you agree, because you have, unfortunately, a personal experience with gun violence. And I will tell you that 25-hour sit-in, I really hope it starts something. Because as John Lewis said, every once in a while, you got to get in the way. Every once in a while, you got to get in trouble. Every once in a while, you can't keep putting up with the same old, same old. And I know that I'm sick of moments of silence. I'm sick of silence. Because now I think you are demanding that we do something. One of my, I don't know what hour it was like 2 in the morning or something, but I thought, man, we should all wear red caps that say, "Make America Safe Again." Before we end, I want to thank our Port Police officers who've been here tonight. Thank you. I think we all behaved well, even though some of us, we did have difference of opinions, and that's okay. That's okay. And I want to thank the Port of Los Angeles High School. Tom Scotty's the principal here, and Roger's been walking around. Thank you for making this space available for us tonight. We really appreciate it. So, again, you know, we talked about a lot of things. We talked about, I think there's a lot of people that would want to ban assault weapons. There's a lot of people that want to, you know, get military-style weapons off of our streets. A lot of people want to talk about magazine clips. Why should anybody, you know, have that many bullets that can kill that many people quickly? But, you know, that's not what we're even asking for. We're just asking to start with these 2 bills. One is if you've been deemed too dangerous to fly, we think you are too dangerous to own a gun. And everybody that buys a gun, wherever they do it, ought to have a background check. And again, if you disagree with this, if my colleagues disagree with those, then vote on it. Vote on it. If you think a terrorist should have a gun, you know, then put your name on the vote. If you don't think people should have background checks when they buy guns, say so. But we, American people, have the right to know how those 435 people vote and believe about the issues that matter to Americans. And while 89% of Americans, I believe, agree on both of these bills, if you don't have the courage to say you're voting no on it, then, you know, you shouldn't be in Congress, because we've been asked to make hard votes. I've had to take hard votes. But you have a right to know how I vote for you, because I represent you. And again, you might not agree with every decision I made, but at least you have a right to know that I'm going to cast a vote on the tough bills that come before me in Congress. So hopefully you will call Speaker Ryan. You're going to write him. If you leave a message for him on some of these notes, I will personally take that to him. And, you know, take this back to the streets, right? Take this back to the streets. Let's not give up on this. Let's not take no for an answer. We've had too much gun violence in this country. Pictures on the wall are just a sample of those who have died. And we just got to put a stop to this so that everyone has the right to live free in this country. Thank you very much.